Hey, we're live. Today is July 1st, 2020. Thank you for being here. I'm sorry about missing yesterday, but even when I was moving, I didn't take a day off. And I went to Hot Springs yesterday and I didn't do anything in town, no spa. Apparently, all the spas are closed. And somebody from our team, donor and somebody who listens here, invited me to come, and the couple was enjoying a break. We have prayed for her in the past because of she was between treatments for cancer, and so they were taking a time to just rest and relax. And they invited me to come over and meet them, and it was really nice. I didn't go to do anything in Hot Springs. The whole point was just to get a chance, since they were close enough to be able to meet them. I have not met all the folks that are here in Arkansas that I know through Facebook or through Larry's channel. And it's getting to be time to start doing that. So that will be happening very soon. Especially now that I've been out of town once. It felt good to get away. Today I'm just kind of going to talk, and we will get to a little bit of scripture at the end. When I got home, my phone's been off since yesterday morning, or at least the volume's been off. And so I haven't heard I got a couple phone calls that I missed because I didn't hear the phone ring, and I wasn't checking text messages. I wasn't checking anything. When I got home, I've got a text message from somebody who owns the radio station, the internet radio station Larry used to be on in 2016. He had listened to a couple days of my program that I'm doing for Larry until he gets back. He wants to put it on the air. Now, he had talked to us about putting Larry's show on the air last year, and we didn't have a chance. I'm sorry, Laura. It should be fine. I don't know what's going on. It's okay here. Anyhow, if anybody knows how to convert, I guess YouTube does an MP4 and he needs an MP3. I do not know how to do any kind of conversion of the voice because it's radio only. So it's just voice, no video. So I guess the 4 is what adds the video. I'm guessing. I have no idea. Anyway, if anybody has the knowledge to help me figure it out, I would really appreciate it. And Laura, let's see, I'm going to have to post in here. Yes, I'm on. So I just opened up my Facebook a few minutes ago, and here is an article from Forbes magazine. First thing I see is Forbes magazine is using the wrong word. So grammatically incorrect, but anyhow. CDC says possibly less than, it should be fewer than, because you can count them. Anything you can count, it has to be fewer, not less. So there's your English lesson for today. CDC says possibly less than half of positive antibody tests are correct. They acknowledge an inability, CDC is acknowledging an inability to accurate, and of course you're not supposed to put an adverb in the middle between to and the verb. They need a better editor. Inability accurately to determine if individuals had been infected with COVID via antibody tests. And so probably fewer than half are actually correctly positive. So there are two types of tests: the molecular diagnostic test, which can identify people with active infections. Well, isn't that the whole point, to find out who has an active infection going on? But a lot of them are using an antibody test that is just determines whether you've ever had the infection, not that you're active now. So, we know. Plus, you hear nurses talking about how they have sent out tests and every single one came back positive. And so they sent a swab that had not been used multiple swabs that had never been used on somebody, and those came out positive. In other words, the positive test result was actually in the swab itself. And so we're not even getting accurate diagnoses. And then on top of that, if somebody is tested and tests positive, you have to come back and get tested again 14 days later. So those count now not as one person infected, but two, because you've got two tests. So the numbers are completely off, completely wrong, and we are really being taken for a ride here. And as Larry said, last week with Jason, everything that he has warned about was coming is here. So communism is here. There are people who are admitting that the country is functioning under communism. I just got a text message, or at least I'm just returning a text message. There is a petition to help Arkansas defend the 10 Commandments. I'll have to read that and share that with you tomorrow. The police are taking over CHOP in Seattle. So far, 15 have been arrested. And here's an update is 31 protesters are arrested as Seattle police clear the area. So finally, Dirk, the mayor didn't like the fact that her private residence was being attacked by these characters. And so that finally motivated her. Well, we shouldn't be surprised. I knew when I went to the church, when we first moved to Maryland in '84, we started attending a church in Northern Virginia. And I knew the day I walked in that this church was going to have a ministry to kids with special needs. My oldest had some severe special needs, and I just knew that God was going to call this church to do something, not only on her behalf, but for others in the community. So I started praying about it. It took 12 years before anything happened. And when I found out that the pastor's wife was pregnant for the 4th time, they weren't planning on having any more kids. They had 3 boys, and this little girl that they had was a surprise. I just went to my knees and I said, God, no, don't do it to them. Please don't do that to them. I knew the minute I heard that she was pregnant that they were going to have to be affected with a child with severe special needs in order to get them to understand that God had a plan for that church that included special needs. The interesting thing is, several years before this pastor had come on board as pastor, when the church had first been started with a few families, I think there were 5 or 6 families, the pastor himself had a daughter with special needs. So I had read a book about the church that this pastor, the originating pastor, had written. So it confirmed to me what I had heard from the Lord, that God had a plan for this church to have a ministry to folks with special needs. I will say now that McLean Bible Church probably is the best church in the entire world as far as their special needs ministry. And I asked God, why did it take 12 years of my praying? And God said, because it wasn't just my prayer. There had to be other people who were interested in supporting. It needed to be more. And as more and more people with kids with special needs came, we refused to leave. We refused to take our kids out. We refused to keep them home. They were there, and finally the church woke up after the pastor's daughter was born with some severe special needs, and they started a department, and they served, the last I heard, there were about 850 families that were served with what they do. They have a Sunday school program during all the Sunday morning services, which was, I think, at least 3. They also have built an incredible respite home that has a therapy pool. It's got any of the things that they've got, tracks on the ceiling that will go from a child's room and go down to the bathing facilities, restroom facilities, and so on. Anyhow, they hire staff, and what they have done is really incredible. And their goal was to have a home like this in every one of their locations. Now they didn't, but when I worked at the church, I worked in childcare, and we sometimes had kids with special needs that would come in, and for babysitting, for Bible studies, and various ministries of the church. Nothing to do with the Sunday school, but any other childcare ministry I was in charge of. So that's the news I know. I haven't heard anything from Larry in a while. No, not since I talked to you guys later. The last time I told you about him. So on the way to Hot Springs, I was listening to the book of John. And the story stuck out in my head because I had heard a pastor using this story. Remember the story of Jesus feeding the 5,000? And the people had been with him for 3 days, and he knew that they would faint on their way home without having eaten for so long. And they were near the Sea of Galilee, and so, what access to fresh water was available, I don't know. You can't go more than 3 days without water. Speaking of going without food and water, there is a fast that started at sundown last night and goes through sundown on Friday. The Esther fast is no food or water for 3 days. That is a little harsh. Very few of us can do that. But any kind of fasting you can do between now and the 4th of July, which is Saturday, please do. Whether you skip 1 meal, 2 meals, 3 meals, whether you only eat vegetables, which is the Daniel fast, whether you whatever you deprive yourself of and spend the time in prayer instead, please do before July 4th, because Antifa and so on are planning to go into the suburbs with murdering and slaughtering nationwide. And I had heard that Obama had a 30,000 man militia. Well, apparently it's 30,000 per state. So they've got a lot of people, MS-13 and other gang members and Antifa and BLM. They admit that they were trained under ISIS. They admit that they are following Marxism. So they are trying to create the chaos that destroys a country so that the communists take over. People will beg for the security and beg for the control that will bring about peace and safety and security. And they will give up freedom for a sense of safety and security. So that's what they are trying to do. And it was interesting, the discussion I had with the friends in Hot Springs, and we were talking about the plan to bring communism to the United States, and the fact that the Illuminati has been willing to wait hundreds of years if necessary to get what they want. Satan has waited thousands of years to get what he wants. He wants to be worshipped. He wants to be God. And he has deceived so many. He is the father of deception. He roams about as an angel of light. So because he is like an angel of light, it's easy to deceive. And they have been, yes, fasting makes you yearn for God. That's right, Big. So they have been waiting. And one of the discussions we had today, this morning, was how, when you have one of these people that do the domino run and they set up these elaborate systems going uphill and down, not hill, but, so the dominoes will fall up and go down a track and they go around this big hall. And sometimes they set up tens of thousands of dominoes and they hit the first one and then they all go down. This is the kind of patience that these evil people behind the scenes have had to get things set up. They knew that the last domino to set up before they could topple everything was the United States. And they have worked to put communist teachers into universities who are then trained and take their communist leanings and socialist leanings into the high schools and down into the elementary schools. And the sexual perversion that they're wanting to teach even kindergarteners is all about the destruction of the family, destruction of society. And they have worked very hard. Khrushchev said, we will take over your schools and we will destroy you from the inside. We don't have to use guns and weapons and bombs. We will destroy you from the inside through your education system, which is exactly what they have done. And, you know, not Khrushchev, he was the one who said it, the communist. Eisenhower, you know, was very concerned about what was coming and warned. And no, James, Larry does not have access to listen. So they have been planning and working. And, you know, Malcolm Gladwell wrote the book, The Tipping Point. And it's like if you hang a bucket, put in one drop at a time, one drop at a time, one drop at a time, one drop at a time. At some point, one more drop will cause the bucket to tip. No, Laura, I did not hear that. So that's incredible. If you can send me a link, that'd be great. Because I haven't listened to news or anything for the last 36 hours. So I got home just a few minutes ago. Anyhow, it's called The Tipping Point. So you fill a bucket one drop at a time. One drop doesn't make much difference, but at some point, one more drop will be enough to tip the bucket. And that's where we are. They have done little by little, very patiently setting things in motion. And now the bucket has tipped. And, you know, if the bucket tips, it goes over and everything in the bucket whooshes out. And if you've got a big enough, you know, it's like a dam that breaks. You know, a little crack isn't going to make a big difference. But at some point, the pressure against that crack, the pressure against that crack, the pressure against that crack, at some point, it's going to give. And we're at that point where all the things that they've been doing to pressurize the dam to destroy the country, they have pushed through and the dam is breaking. And whether we have still enough time and whether the church is going to rise up and do what needs to be done to say, no, you are not going to do this to us. You are not going to do this to our country. God is watching. I think that's why the blood moon, the lunar eclipse, Saturday night, July 4th, 11:07 is when it starts. It's only going to be a partial blood moon, partial eclipse, and it's a blood moon with a silver lining. God is watching the church. God is watching the Christians. God is watching my people. As Larry said in October 2016, over and over and over on every show he was doing, if my people who are called by my name will humble themselves and pray, that's great. That's not enough. And seek my face and turn from their wicked ways. That's repentance. How many of you are seeing much being said about repentance? I know I'm not the only one. But how many places are we seeing it? And remember what I said on Monday, that I had heard somebody speaking on Sunday, I think it was John Kilpatrick, mentioned going when Abraham was pleading for Sodom and Gomorrah to protect Lot. God said that if there were 10 righteous, he would hold back his judgment. I know we have more than 10. I know we have more than 10 people who are righteous, but it's really important that groups of 10 be meeting together for prayer. And we don't have 10 on the conference calls anymore. At one point we did, and we don't right now. We need to be trying to find a way to have 10 people that we can, either by phone or in person, that we are praying with, that God would protect our area. I know that God has called. One of the things we can do is we can walk around our immediate neighborhood and ask God to protect everything. Circle your neighborhood and ask God to protect everything and everybody within that circle. If you can't walk it and you have a car or a bicycle and you can drive or ride around, pray as you circle where you live and ask God to please take care of that. Another thing for prayer, I was at Dollar Tree today on my way home and I saw this ball. Let's turn this around. It's a map of the world. It's a globe. I've been wanting a globe for a long time and I just haven't had the money to buy one. So it's the complete globe. It's $1, folks. It's a beach ball. What I plan to do, I bought several. I'm going to keep one. Now, whether I'm going to throw it in the air and catch it or whether I'm just going to pick it up wherever my hand lands. And right now it landed on the Amazon and Australia. Wherever my hand lands, I am going to pray for those countries. And it's an opportunity to pray. It's something you can do with your children. God is interested in nations. We need to be praying for the nations, our own as well as others. The president of, I think it was Uganda, recognized that this whole COVID thing was a hoax and recognized what the World Health Organization was doing. And he became outspoken about it for the sake of his country and refusing Bill Gates vaccines, and they murdered him. He was murdered last week. Thank God there are people waking up, but who's going to now rise up in his place? And Uganda has a history of such, I remember as a teenager when Idi Amin was the president of Uganda, hearing the horror stories coming out from missionaries who were able to get the word out about what was happening to the people there. You know, it's like what happened in Somalia. It's like the fight between the Hutus and the Tutsis that was in Rwanda. You know, the genocide that happens. And what's happening right now in Nigeria with Boko Haram and the way they are trying to destroy the church. We need to be in prayer for the nations. And anyhow, if your Dollar Tree has one of these, it's only $1, folks, get it. I have on my refrigerator a map of Washington, D.C. from the White House to the Capitol. And so it's the Supreme Court is marked, and the Capitol and the buildings, the Longworth and the Rayburn buildings. I will go up to my refrigerator and lay hands on and pray. Pray for the White House, everybody in it. Pray for the president. Pray for the Capitol and everybody who works there. Pray for the offices that are there. Pray for the Supreme Court. It's a way to stop and think. And I go up to the refrigerator. I just lay my hand on. It only takes a few seconds, guys. It's so easy to print out a map. You just go to Google Maps and hit print. It's a reminder. It is something that is so quick to do. I have had pictures and names and so on my bathroom. I've had scripture taped to the mirror. It is so easy to put scripture on your kitchen cabinet, on your mirror. Use painter's tape and take it off on a regular basis so it doesn't melt, so the glue doesn't melt. Anyhow, it's I've never heard of Murica. Big, explain what Murica is. The largest group of peoples in one nation. Explain. I've never heard that word before. So there was prayer. On Monday, I was talking about fear. And I've talked a lot of times about the fact that there are 365 verses that say, don't be afraid, fear not, over and over and over again. If God says something once, you'll listen. If he says it twice, you better pay attention. 3 and more times, you have got to be obedient. You know, Psalm 46:1, be still and know that I am God. Zechariah 3:10, be still before the Lord. In the Gospels where Jesus stills the water and says, peace, be still. And there's a verse in Exodus 20, I think verse 5, that talks about being still. And that's important. So when you are fearful, fear causes stress. When you are feeling stress, we've got to be still. And that's what I had a chance to do in Hot Springs. We didn't go anywhere. We just stayed at the cabin, and they invited me to spend the night, and it was incredibly awesome to be able to get up this morning and continue our conversation. At one point, we went and sat on the deck outside, and I finished reading Ezekiel after they had gone inside to whatever they were doing, take a nap or whatever they were doing. And the wind, they were lakefront or just nearly lakefront. We could see the lake there. And the wind blowing off the lake was wonderful fresh air, which was very soothing and healing. But as it was rustling through all the oak, these huge oak trees, tall trees, the sound of the leaves rustling, I just said to the Lord, I just broke into this big laughter, and I said, God, creation itself is praising you. Are you listening to this praise on your behalf? You are to be honored, God. What amazing things you have done, that even when the Pharisees were angry at people shouting Hosanna when he came into the city of Jerusalem riding on the donkey on Palm Sunday, that the Pharisees were angry, and Jesus said, if the children are quiet, the rocks and trees are going to cry out. And I went, God, not the rocks, but the trees themselves are praising you. And the birds were singing outside, and the birds were praising the Lord. And I just thought, this is incredible. It was really wonderful to rest. So that's one way to find rest. Now, last fall, I was real stressed about trying to get my house sold so I could move, and greatly concerned. Well, be honest, I was afraid that I was going to lose the house. And I thank God so much for the people who helped me, loaned me money to stay in the house until I could sell and pay them back. That's awesome, James. I'm glad that you're a blessing to others. That's fabulous. So I was talking to somebody one day talking about the fear. To be honest, I was afraid, and I know I'm not to be afraid. And he said, go to the park. And I said, you don't understand. My backyard is prettier than a park. But what I took from that is I needed to take a few minutes and sit and look out the back window and thank God for the view I had back there. And thank God, and just be focused on gratitude for a few minutes instead of just letting my mind and my body race and under pressure for what needed to be done. Oh, thanks, Big. America is the largest group of people in one nation. We are of different nations. That's true. Different nations in one nation, because China has the highest population in the world. I think 1.4 billion. India has 1.3 billion, and we have 325 million. So it's quite, India and China are triple, nearly triple. No, it's more than triple, just over triple and we're the third largest population in the world. So what I did is I took time to look out the window and focus on gratitude. So I wanted to talk a little more about stress and fear and things that we can do. So some practical suggestions added to what I said Monday. Breathe through your nose very slowly, as long as you've got clear nasal passages. Otherwise, use your mouth. But you want to breathe in slowly to the count of 10. And then when you're ready to exhale, purse your lips and blow out quickly. And do that several times. Don't do it till you hyperventilate, but do it several times. That helps lower stress because you're getting more oxygen into your brain as you slowly inhale and then push that carbon dioxide out quickly. We talked about music on Monday, and I mentioned music. if you have kids who are in college or high school or even elementary school, and they're having a hard time concentrating, play Mozart's violin concertos. It will help with focus. That's really important. The frequencies of the violin at the upper frequencies is very good at helping to organize the brain. And yes, just don't wear a mask. Exactly. Anyhow, Mozart's violin concertos are very good for helping to organize the brain, especially if you've got kids with ADD or ADHD. It's a fast moving, but it's at high frequencies, and that is really good to help you focus when you're studying. And if you are having trouble with sleep, a couple of my favorite pieces of music to help with de-stressing is Albinoni. He's an Italian composer. Albinoni's Adagio, very slow. Now, the whole work of Adagio has fast and slow and everything, but the movement Adagio is very slow and quiet paced. Then you've got the French Debussy and his Clair de Lune, Claire, de Lune, Lune, Clair de Lune. That's very peaceful. And Bach's Air on a G string. Bach is German. So those folks from several hundred years ago, their music was it's very soothing, very healing, and that will help with de-stressing. And laughter. I had a friend who had cancer, and she got her hands on as many funny videos as she possibly could. It was cute in this cottage that my friends, now I'm calling them friends because I consider you guys friends. And if I had a chance to meet you, it would be like getting together with friends too. It was like meeting a family member because we've been in communication through text and phone calls occasionally and so on, and helping them deal with some of the tough times they've been going through. And I lost my train of thought, Jim. We were talking about music. Shoot, I can't remember what I was saying. Anyhow, funny, laughter, the importance of laughter. She rented as many funny videos as she could. So this cottage we were in had a picture of Laurel and Hardy. And there was Laurel, Stanley Laurel. They were on a park bench. The thing stood about 2 feet high. I mean, they looked such spitting image likenesses of them. It was really incredible. So Laurel had his hand up, and it was, he was agreeing, thumbs up or something like this. And Hardy was, he had his other hand up, and it just, every time I looked at him, I had to laugh because it looked like they were participating in our conversation. So laughter is important. So my friend really, one of the things that helped her through her cancer treatments was the lightheartedness of she made sure she had positive people around her who would help make her laugh. And that is incredible. Big John is a fabulous book to read. It's one of the easiest books in the Bible to read, and insightful, absolutely. So laughter, finding ways to laugh. And I noticed in Jamaica, growing up there, that we ministered to, and I say we because I participated in my parents' ministry a lot, and we ministered to the poorest of the poor, and they would come to church with such incredible, exuberant joy in their singing, in their worship of the Lord, in their care, just praising God. The way they would sway, and I'm sorry, it's getting a little out of focus when I move. The way they would sway to the music, the joy that the gusto with which they sang, it was an incredible lesson to me on learning to trust God no matter how dire the circumstances, because they knew the promise of heaven meant that what they were dealing with was light and temporary affliction, as it says in Scripture. So we've talked about music. And remember, Pastor Casper McLeod wrote the book, What Was I Thinking? I highly recommend you try and find that. What Was I Thinking? It's packed, otherwise I would show it to you. The book is blue. It's got a picture of a brain, I think, on the front. But he has said, you can't recite the numbers backwards from 100. That takes concentration. But if you then try to say the alphabet at the same time, you can't do both. You can say one or the other, or one after the other. 10A, 9B, but you can't say them both at the same time. The brain cannot hold two things in the same second at the same time. You can't do that. And so when you've got negative thoughts coming into your head, Paul said, and I think it's 1 Corinthians 10:5, or it might be 2 Corinthians 10:5, take every thought captive to the mind of Christ. We're to take our thoughts captive. And so when you've got something negative, you've got fear, you've got stress, you've got anger, whatever that is, replace it with something positive. And I was thinking about, we had a discussion about being treated with verbal abuse and being mistreated, or relationships that are really difficult. We had some time as we were sharing with one another, talking about experiences we've had. I had asked my dad one time, it's quite common for especially a firstborn daughter, but for daughter and mother to have some clashes and have some stress in their relationship. And sometimes it's difficult to work that relationship out. And I asked Dad one time, how is it you have been able to stay married to my mother all these years? Because she can be pretty hard to live with and hard on people, and because of the way she is gifted. And she said, my dad taught me a lesson I will never forget, that meant it was a really profound lesson to learn. He said, everybody has a good side and a bad side. Everybody has strengths and weaknesses. For him, he said, Mom's strengths were so incredible and meant so much to him that he dealt with the other side, because he wanted to be with her for the strengths she had. It was an incredible lesson. And one of the things I learned when I was taking a class in management, whether you are a manager in business, working for a company, or whether you are a parent or grandparent interacting with your children and grandchildren. Moonlight Sonata, that's another very peaceful one, if you just do the first movement. Otherwise, in the middle, it moves very, very quickly. But yeah, the first movement's incredible. Strengths. Everybody has weaknesses. If you spend your time trying to correct a weakness and improve it, you may be spinning your wheels and wasting a lot of time. What is far more efficient is to strengthen a person's strengths. Recognize the strengths a person has and help them take those strengths deeper. Help them expand their strengths. If you are in business, be realistic about where your weaknesses are and hire somebody who is strong in your area of weakness, so they will complement you, so that you will have a stronger organization, because you are building complementary strengths. Now that you may, because people with different strengths very often have different weaknesses. And because of that, you will have clashes. Hi, Diane. You'll have clashes maybe in your meetings, because people don't see eye to eye. But if you are hiring strengths and you can handle conflict, like Ruth Graham said, Billy Graham's wife, if we were both the same, one of us would not be necessary. So you don't want just to have yes men who are going along with everything that you appreciate. You want somebody who's going to challenge you and force growth. force growth for you personally, force growth for the organization, force growth in your children by recognize your children's strengths and encourage them in their strengths. The weaknesses become less important if you are building strengths. And that's a real important thing to note for any relationship is, thanks, James. I appreciate your making me laugh. Anyhow, and then I did turn on my Facebook for a couple minutes. I was scrolling through yesterday and came across somebody who was broadcasting live the church service at River Church, which is Rodney Howard Brown's church there in Tampa Bay. And so we listened to the message, and some guy named Jonathan, and I have no idea who it was, but he was talking about our lack of trust in God. William Carey, the father of missions, the father of modern missions, said, expect great things from God, attempt great things for God. So with this message this pastor gave last night, they're having services every night out in the parking lot. So the message he gave, he was talking about Jehoshaphat and how several nations had come against them to fight. And God said, stand and see the deliverance of the Lord. The angel of the Lord went through the enemy camp and killed every one of them. Not one survived. But Jehoshaphat didn't know that had happened. And in the morning, he assembled the troops to march out to battle, trusting that what God had said that God would fight for them was going to be true. And not only that, but he had the choir out in front, the Levites, to sing as they marched out to the battle. And anyhow, the angel had won the battle for them before they even marched out, but they didn't know that. And God wanted them. They still had to show up. And of course, they went in then and got the spoils. But they had to go out. They had to go out and line up for the battle. So this morning, Dave Daubenmire, I listen to him just about every day. Don't always make it all the way through without falling back asleep because it's so early for me. But he was talking about based on this story that I had listened to in John with the feeding of the 5,000. I didn't finish that story here for you at the beginning. Sorry, I got very off on a tangent. So Jesus told the disciples to sit everybody down in groups of 50 and 100 and said, you feed them. And it's like, with what? Well, go see what we've got. They found one little child with 5 loaves and 2 fish. Some mother knew this child wanted to follow Jesus and learn from Jesus. And that mother had prepared a meal for that child. And I've heard it preached that because that mother had foresight to make provision for her child, God was able to take that and multiply it. But yes, God created out of nothing with his words in the beginning of creation. But it is very presumptuous of us to expect that he is going to create something out of nothing if we have done nothing to prepare. You've heard the word, Dave Daubenmire was talking about Sun Tzu, TSU, I think it is, The Art of War. And one of the things Sun Tzu reminds us of is if you fail to plan, you have obviously planned to fail. And he talked about, don't go into battle unless you are sure you can win. Don't just run to a fight unless you are sure you could win. It's important to fight. It's important to engage, but make sure you have planned first how you will win. And that goes along with the mother who prepared her child for her child's survival, being out in a wilderness area. This mother had prepared the child for the child, had made provision, and God was able to take that. Jesus was able to take that and multiply it to feed 5,000. We are very foolish if we think that God is miraculously going to do a creation like he did at the beginning of time and take nothing to create something. It's not that he can't, but we need to be preparing for survival. And, there are threats of an EMP or the loss of electricity and water and gas and who knows what all that's dependent on electricity if we get hit with an EMP, and they're threatening it for next month. So we're only a week away from next month. Or no, next month started today. July started today. We're here. So, and when you think about Antifa threatening to go into the suburbs to rape and pillage and kill on July 4th, we need to be thinking about what we're going to do. There are too many people where they come in to rape the wife and the man sits in the corner praying and does nothing to help protect. This is not God's plan. That is not God's plan. We need to be talking. If you are married, if you have family, if you have somebody living with you, you need to talk about what you can do. And it is fearful to face fearful situations, but it is realistic to have discussions about worst case scenarios and what you can do. Even if you can't do much, at least talk about what will give you the best chance. That's preparation, folks, and that's something we need to do. All right, it's been 47 minutes. I've gone longer than normal, and I didn't even open the word other than to talk about the story of the child whose mom had helped prepare him that Jesus fed 5,000 with. It's an important story, though. So with that, let me suggest that you be still. There's no conference call tonight because I am learning the Hebrew alphabet, and I have my second class tonight. So I will be back tomorrow. If anybody knows how I can convert the YouTube show into an MP3 that we can get it put on the radio in Dallas, it's internet, the stations in in Dallas, or the station owner is there in the Dallas area. And of course, because it's internet, it's international. So if anybody knows how to teach me how to do to go from this to capturing it for an MP3, please give me a call. I'm going to turn my phone on now. It's been off for 24 hours, but I'm going to turn it on now. And so you can call me. And my cell phone number is showing on. Now, why is it not showing on the screen? Oh, because I didn't hit in the center. There's my number. So if you can help me figure out what to do, I'd appreciate it. So luck is preparation. Okay, I don't quite know, but thank you for your good wishes and blessings back at you. And we'll talk tomorrow. Thanks. Bye.